Welcome to the deep dive. We've just been digging through, well, a really complex few days in global diplomacy, trying to understand what really went down at that big summit. You probably saw the headlines, sure, but like always, there's so much more going on just beneath the surface. A lot to unpack. We're focusing today on the G7 summit, the one that just wrapped up in Kananaskis, Alberta. That was June 15th to 17th, 2025. And look, it wasn't just your standard meeting of the wealthiest democracies. It felt more like, I don't know, a high stakes diplomatic play. And one leader really navigated it skillfully. So, our mission today, we want to explore how India, led by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, pulled off this kind of masterclass in diplomatic, well, tightrope walking, we'll get into everything, mending fences with Canada after that long freeze, but also, pushing back pretty firmly against some, let's say, bold claims from the US president. Get ready for the highs, the lows, the complexities of global politics. We'll try to make it crystal clear and hopefully pretty interesting too.
Yeah, what's really fascinating, I think, is how these different threads kind of pull together. You've got the Canada reset, that rather pointed phone call with Trump, and just the general G7 backdrop. It all seems to highlight India's changing role. It's evolving on the world stage. It's not just what happened, but digging into why it matters for, the bigger picture, the strategy behind it all.
Okay, let's dive into that first big story then, the Canada one. The reset between India and Canada, because for years that relationship was, well, you said it, frosty, colder than Kananaskis in January maybe.
Right, absolutely. And that frostiness, it really stems from that period after June 2023. You remember, former Prime Minister Trudeau made that public accusation.
About India's alleged involvement in Hardeep Singh Nijjar's killing in Vancouver.
Exactly. India immediately called it absurd. And the fallout was pretty dramatic. Diplomats expelled, ties downgraded. It was a serious rupture, like something out of a political thriller, honestly.
But then things changed in Canada. A new leader, Mark Carney.
Yeah, the former central banker came in after that surprise election in March 2025. He's known for, handling crises, a steady hand.
And he reached out, invited Modi to the G7 as special guest. That feels like a pretty clear signal, right? An olive brand.
A very clear signal. He wanted to turn the page.
So what actually happened when they met on the sidelines there in Kananaskis?
Well, the key outcome was an agreement. Both sides agreed to appoint new high commissioners and, importantly, to take, quote, calibrated steps to rebuild that trust. It's a start, a crucial diplomatic thaw.
Calibrated steps. Sounds cautious.
It is cautious,
Yeah.
but it's movement. It's about moving past the public shouting match and getting back to, well, diplomacy.
Yeah.
Practical steps.
Yeah.
The Nijjar issue isn't just gone, obviously, but the focus seems to be shifting.
And this handshake, it really matters, doesn't it? You've got over 1.3 million people of Indian origin in Canada. Many Sikhs. That Nijjar case hit that community hard. It was a political minefield.
A huge minefield.
And Carney, maybe with that banker's perspective, seems less about playing to the crowd compared to Trudeau. Trudeau, you could argue, was partly driven by domestic politics, needing NDP support. And the NDP had some sympathy towards, the Khalistan movement angles.
That's a fair point.
Yeah.
Carney seems more focused on the pragmatic side. Less political theater, perhaps. More about stability and, crucially, the economics.
But isn't there a risk there? If he focuses too much on trade, could he be seen as, I don't know, brushing aside those really serious concerns about the Nijjar killing that still exist for some Canadians?
It's definitely a balancing act, a
Look.
very delicate one he's trying to pull off. But yeah, the economic driver is undeniable. You mentioned the numbers. $8.37 billion in bilateral trade just in 2024. That's significant.
Wow.
And then there's the investment piece, $75 billion in Canadian pension fund money already invested in India. Think infrastructure, tech, big money.
So they're restarting trade talks, too,
Yeah.
that early progress trade agreement.
Exactly. That's the stepping stone. The goal is the bigger comprehensive economic partnership agreement, the CPA. The EPT is like laying the groundwork, and the CPA is the whole structure.
Got it. And India's exports to Canada were up nearly 10% last year.
Yeah, $4.2 billion. Medicines, clothes, diamonds leading the way. So this reset, it reflects India's economic weight, right? Fifth largest economy globally, key part of supply chains now. It opens a door, maybe, to talk about the tough stuff like transnational crime, the Khalistan issue, but in a more constructive way, not just shouty matches. Both leaders seem to want that more careful approach.
Okay, so from that careful diplomatic dance with Canada, we pivot. A completely different vibe, really, the interaction with the U.S. president. If the Canada reset was about quiet diplomacy, Modi's call with Donald Trump was, well, definitely more assertive. Out there in public.
Oh, yeah.
Because Trump, never wanted to understate his own role.
Understatement of the year.
Right. He'd been claiming he brokered the ceasefire between India and Pakistan back in May 2025, after that short, sharp conflict, painting himself as the indispensable dealmaker.
And India's response?
Yeah.
It was remarkably direct, but still polite, which is interesting.
Right.
India's Foreign Secretary, Vikram Misri, just flat out clarified it. No U.S. mediation.
Yeah.
Zero.
None.
None. He stated the ceasefire came through direct military talks.
Mm-hmm.
India-Pakistan.
Oh.
Specifically because Pakistan requested it after, well, India had the upper hand in Operation Sindoor. Modi apparently told Trump something like, thanks, but no thanks, politely reinforcing India's long-standing policy is like 80 years against third parties getting involved in India-Pakistan issues.
Wow, that's quite something. Publicly correcting the U.S. president like that, especially Trump, who, let's face it, doesn't always stick to the script or reality. It sends a very clear message, doesn't it? India handles its own neighborhood. They weren't going to let him take credit for something he didn't do. No, I saved South Asia merchandise this time. But what's the risk? I mean, publicly contradicting a U.S. president, especially one known for remembering slights, could that backfire? The U.S. still has a lot of economic leverage.
That's the calculation, isn't it? It's a calculated risk. It shows India's confidence, perhaps, in its own standing, and the context matters here.
The May conflict.
Yes, sparked by that terror attack in Pahalgam, Kashmir. India launched Operation Sindoor, targeting terror camps across the border. Pakistan was caught off balance militarily. They initiated the ceasefire talks through their Director General of Military Operations. So Trump's mediation, probably just him offering advice on a phone call, which India listened to politely and then ignored firmly. It shows India won't be pushed around, even by a superpower in its own region.
And dealing with Trump, it's unpredictable. His whole America First thing, the threats of tariffs, that could really hit India's trade surplus with the U.S. What is it, $74 billion?
It's substantial.
Yeah.
And yes, India wants a trade deal, a bilateral one. But they know they'll need to negotiate hard. Trump isn't exactly known for giving ground easily, especially on tariffs. India wants zero tariffs. He wants concessions. It's a tough negotiation ahead.
And it's not just trade, is it? Trump's foreign policy is, well, unique.
Unpredictable is one word. He's also been, pushing for closer ties with Pakistan, invited their army chief to U.S. Army Day. That certainly didn't go unnoticed in New Delhi. But India's response seems consistent. Stay calm, focus on their own strategic goals. Things like the Quad with the U.S., Japan, Australia. Keep building other partnerships, like trade talks with the EU, the UK. Diversify. Don't let one unpredictable relationship derail everything.
Okay, let's widen the lens a bit. The G7 summit itself, Kananaskis. It kind of felt chaotic, like the rich countries club trying to look united but facing massive global shifts and, frankly, some internal disagreements.
Yeah, chaotic is a good word for it this year, especially with Trump leaving early because of the escalating Israel-Iran situation. It felt less about grand consensus and more about managing splits.
But even with all that chaos, Modi seemed to make the most of his invitation, didn't he?
Absolutely. India was invited as a guest for the 7th year running. That alone says something about its growing importance, right? Non-G7 member, but consistently at the table.
7th year.
Right. With a $4 trillion economy, growing fast, and this ability to kind of stay neutral or multi-aligned in this polarized world, India is a partner everyone wants to talk to.
And he had other meetings, too, not just Carney and the Trump call.
Oh, yeah. Productive bilaterals. Met with South Korea's Lee Jae-young, Mexico's Claudia Sheinbaum, talking tech, trade, security, building those ties beyond just the G7 core.
So expanding India's network.
Exactly. But yeah, as we said, the headline interactions were definitely with Carney and that Trump phone call.
Yeah.
Those really defined India's summit.
What about the G7's own agenda under Carney's leadership, his first time hosting?
Well, he tried to push forward on some key areas. Joint statements on AI, quantum computing, tackling migrant smuggling, important global issues, no doubt.
But then you had Trump throwing curveballs, suggesting Russia and China join.
Right. I mean, Russia was kicked out in 2014 over Crimea. China's not a democracy. It just kind of underscored the deep fractures within the G7 itself. Didn't exactly help build consensus.
So for India, it wasn't really about getting tangled in the G7's internal issues?
Not primarily, no. It was more about using that stage, asserting India's place in this changing global landscape, especially with the U.S. being unpredictable under Trump and Europe facing its own set of challenges. India sees an opening, a space to maneuver.
Which brings us to that idea of strategic autonomy.
Exactly. Textbook example at the G7. It's India's core foreign policy doctrine now, prioritizing national interest over aligning strictly with any one bloc, U.S., China, Russia. Think of it like Diplomatic yoga, maybe. Flexible, bending without breaking, engaging everyone, but on India's terms, not getting locked into rigid alliances.
And they're playing the long game. Most populous country, fourth biggest economy now.
Set to overtake Japan very soon, by March 2026, projections say.
Huge. And a major player in the Indo-Pacific. So in a way, the G7 almost needs India more than India needs the G7, especially as a voice for the global South.
You can definitely argue that. India acts as a bridge, and its presence adds legitimacy, connects the G7 to broader global realities. And Modi's meetings weren't just casual chats. They fit into a larger strategy. Building economic links, yes, but also projecting strength, pushing for that global anti-terrorism framework, for example.
Which connects directly back to Operation Sindoor.
Precisely. It's sending a message. India is serious about its security, and it expects global cooperation on counterterrorism. It's ready to lead on issues vital to its interests, not just react.
So while the G7 leaders were maybe dealing with their own internal dramas and sipping expensive coffee, India was busy navigating the whole thing, dodging Trump stuff, fixing things with Canada. It really showed India as a serious, confident player. You couldn't ignore Modi's presence there.
Undeniably confident. A very assured performance on the world stage.
Okay, so let's try and crystallize the takeaways from this G7 roller coaster, specifically for India. What have we learned? Well, first, that Canada reset seems significant. Opening the door for better trade, maybe more security cooperation. Although that Nijjar case, it's still there in the background, right? Needs careful handling.
Absolutely. It's not forgotten. Requires ongoing dialogue and delicate management.
Yeah.
But the reset itself is real.
And second, that pushback against Trump's claims, really standing firm on the mediation thing, sends a powerful signal about sovereignty, about assertiveness.
A very clear signal. No ambiguity there.
So this kind of leads to a bigger question maybe for you listening. We see the G7 still the wealthiest club, but maybe looking a bit out of sync. As the global South rises, new powers emerge.
Right. The dynamics are shifting.
So what does India's position, this bridge between the old guard and the new players, this strategic autonomy, what does that actually mean for the future? Does it make India more influential? Less? How does it shape what comes next?
It's a crucial question. Is being the balancer, the independent player, the most effective way to exert influence in this messy new world order?
It definitely feels like India is playing a bigger, more complex game now, with skill and, yeah, a bit of swagger, too.
Smart diplomacy mixed with strategic confidence.
This whole deep dive, it really shows whether it's fixing old problems or subtly managing powerful egos, India is proving it can more than hold its own. It can actually shape the conversation.
The big challenge now, though, is converting that influence, turning these diplomatic wins into concrete results.
Like what?
Like finalizing those big trade deals.
Yeah.
Getting real movement on climate action cooperation. And maybe building that stronger, genuinely unified global stance against terrorism that India wants. Moving from maneuvers to tangible outcomes. That's the next step.
So, next time you see headlines about a big summit, just remember, there's often way more happening than meets the eye. It's this intricate dance.
Complex layers.
And sometimes, yeah, the most interesting, the most impactful moves come from players you weren't initially focused on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive today. We really hope it gave you some fresh insights into the fascinating and often tangled world of global diplomacy.